thank you. First of all, thanks so much for the chance to be here. And I'm really glad that we were able to come together both to spend a little bit of time in the community that has meant so much. I see so many faces here who have been longtime friends of South Bend, leaders in South Bend, and a few new faces here too. So I'm glad to have that opportunity. And in particular to share what has really been one of the most memorable trips I've ever had the privilege of taking. But before that, I do just want to thank you, because this is among the most active and energetic civic organizations we have. And I think at a moment when our national fabric is under a certain kind of strain, it becomes more important than ever for us to have other forms of fabric that pull us together. And I very much see that in the Jewish community in our area and with the Jewish Federation in particular. So much so that I should add that I let the organizers of this trip know that the main reason that I accepted the invitation was that I'd been urged to do so by my local Jewish Federation. I have been invited to a lot of interesting places, but as you know, the job of mayor is very intimate, very local job. And so even though I love travel, and I love to see places that are different from my own, most of the time I can't say yes to these invitations, because the first rule I find in mayoral travel is always get back before they figure out that you're gone. But I also knew that as somebody who had not visited this country and who knew how important this relationship was, both to individuals that I care about in the community and to the community as a whole, at a moment when South Bend's rise and I think South Bend's recovery and rediscovery has very much been a function of our connection and relationship to the rest of the world. And that's been particularly true with some business relationships and investments that have had to do with Israeli business. That it was really time for me to see for myself. The trip was a very special one also because it was specifically geared toward mayors. And so the mayor of Dayton, Ohio, Dan Whaley, the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, Andy Ginter, and the mayor of West Palm Beach, Florida, Jerry Moyo, who, believe it or not, provided some of the earliest examples of policies in the 1990s that whose success became part of the inspiration for what we did with Smart Streets here in South Bend. So love or hate, you got West Palm Beach in part to thank for that. So it made an intimate but really special group that was able to take a mayor's eye view of what we saw. I brought along the itinerary just because I need the memory aid a little bit, because so much was packed into that trip. And I suppose in a way that's symbolic of the fact that so much is packed into this very small piece of land. It's almost a cliche, I gather, to say it for a first-time visitor, but I'll just say it. I was really struck by how compact the territory is. Places I see on the news, places I have read about in Scripture, places I have heard about in war, that turn out to be no further apart from each other than Goshen is from Plymouth or South Bend from St. Joseph, Michigan. In particular, we had a chance, we felt it the whole time, but we had a helicopter trip, which I think the whole purpose of it was the one moment when the pilot could say, that over there is the sea, and that over there is the border of the West Bank, and in between is all we've got. And it really did help put into perspective some things that just don't make the same kind of sense if you haven't seen them for yourself. Another thing that was very striking that I was not fully prepared for was the modernity, the global character, and the energy and the vitality and the diversity of the city of Tel Aviv. So our visit began there, a little bleary-eyed as you are when you first arrive. I found myself, in order to keep my blood pumping, went out for a quick jog before the programming began, went up and down that strand in Tel Aviv, and saw, in many ways, I felt like I was seeing the future. In a very specific way, I thought I was seeing the future because it had these electric scooters that I think are soon going to be finding their way. In fact, the same company that is behind the Line Bike in South Bend wants to introduce these here. And so I was taking very close notes on what did and did not seem to be working with these scooters. But also just in the vibrancy of that beachfront, the energy of it. You saw what it means to have a country that just about everybody there is intimately connected to at least two nationalities, Israeli and then almost always another country, whether they were born there or have family there, from the US to Russia and Eastern Europe, to increasingly Ethiopia and other places around not just the region but around the world. We benefited from a number of conversations with experts, and I won't kind of subject you to the blow by blow, but I want to mention a few that made a real impression. One of the first people to speak with us actually was a name that was very familiar to me, which is Dan Tuckman, who is now, I believe, a major in the military, and also offered just a brilliant exposition of some of what's happening in terms of the security conditions there. Obviously, I took a little selfish pride in letting all the mayors know that all roads lead to South Bend. Someone who had been originally born and educated here, seeing in that capacity was really special. I mentioned that a mayor's eye view is a little bit different, so actually one of the first and most compelling things that all of us had urgently asked to see, I probably should have said a little more about wanting to see the excavation of the city of David, but when they said, what do you want to see as a mayor, I started with the thing that was on the top of my mind, wastewater. This may or may not be a hot topic for most people who visit Israel, but for us, for any mayor, it's a big deal. So much of my job has to do with dealing with water. You're delivering water, you're removing water, water arrives in frozen form, then you're rearranging it. So we had a very special opportunity to visit the wastewater treatment plant at Dan region. It's next to, if you're very familiar with the country, it's next to an IKEA somewhere in the outskirts. And the sophistication of the processes there was very impressive. Obviously under some pressure in terms of the ability to gather water supply that we're not, but also doing a lot of things that are very similar to what we do in terms of the importance of organic resources. So they make sure that some of the byproducts of the wastewater treatment process are then recycled, brought out to the fields, and made to literally help fertilize Israeli agriculture in a way that we're aspiring to do here in South Bend as well. So I enjoyed comparing notes on that. It was a seriously impressive achievement, even if that's a little wonky compared to the things that probably get more headlines. We were invited to visit an LGBT center that same day in the city of Tel Aviv. We met a very dynamic person who explained to us the complexity around civil and religious law, and also the way that, in many ways, certainly within the Middle East, that kind of equality and that kind of advancement has really been led from that community that's in Tel Aviv. We met that evening with someone from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who specialized in innovation and technology, and reminded me very much of some of the most exciting things happening in the startup community that I had seen in Silicon Valley, but happening with a very unique relationship with the state, which works and acts to promote the activities of the startup community in a way I hadn't ever seen happen at a national level. And it helped to explain why, when we had a chance to see for ourselves what was going on, it was much more energetic than I might have expected. In particular, we visited a startup called Zen City, which I've actually now put in touch with the South Bend Department of Innovation, because some of what they do, scanning social media in order to do what they call sentiment analysis, basically using computer programming to try to understand how people are thinking about an issue in ways that sometimes are more revealing than what you get when you go to traditional public meetings. So we don't always think about this, but there's a selection bias in just about any attempt you make to gather public opinion. The story was told of a place in Tel Aviv, a neighborhood, apparently it's a very hipster neighborhood in Tel Aviv, has the highest concentration of dog ownership of almost any city in the world. And a dog park was proposed, but the meeting to discuss it was held at a certain time when a certain group of people who, we in South Bend had a similar, if nobody's offended by this, I'm hopefully never reply to anybody here. We call it Citizens Against Virtually Everything, Kate. So there were about 12 people showed up to this meeting, shouted it down, and this dog park was never built. It turned out by doing social media analysis, they discovered that the sorts of people who were available to show up at a meeting at that time didn't reflect the neighborhood at all. Actually, there were thousands of people who thought this was a great idea. And so that kind of attention to public opinion is something that cities around the world take interest in. And sure enough, when I was in Boston on Saturday for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I ran into the CEO of that company who had been briefing us just 2 or 3 weeks earlier at their offices in Tel Aviv. just a really impressive set of people here, and the intellect, but also the energy there was very special. We then visited the Rupin Academic Center. I don't know if anybody's seen this. It's a really impressive university or college facility that does a lot around health and agriculture that I actually would very much like to connect up with St. Mary's College, because their focus was on the health and education of women. And again, they're thinking about immigration and integration in just such a different way than we do here. Something that's very much driven the growth and perhaps in many ways even the survival of Israel, but is also being tested in some complex ways, as you have in particular with the arrival of an Ethiopian community, people who have more of a challenge integrating and bring sometimes health challenges that need to be addressed with a lot of intention. And then we had a fascinating meeting with somebody who I think reminded me quite a bit of myself. His name is Asaf Zamir. He is the deputy mayor of Tel Aviv, which is an elected position. He's, I think, my age exactly, or maybe a year apart, and is somebody who was elected on a platform, basically, for a party that was specifically geared toward making Tel Aviv more vibrant for young people. In fact, they're having a bit of an identity crisis in the party because they're called something along the lines of Young People's Party, and he realized as he gets into his late 30s, he might not qualify for it. So they're trying to figure out, is this party, ages with its leadership, how it's going to fit in. But also talking about some of the challenges that went along with growth, some of the technological applications, much like my 311 call centers that we set up. Sorry. They've done something that I very much want to aspire to do, which is in Tel Aviv, you have, I guess, a certain kind of identity card that goes with you as a city, just as we've created an ID card, a municipal ID card here in South Bend. But they've taken theirs and moved it into a digital format. And through the smartphone app that carries your ID card, are able to push information on everything from health alerts to the ability to quickly and easily register your kids for kindergarten. So it's become something with social and administrative benefits through technology, but also making a very inclusive pattern of growth. I am tempted to discuss the food, but I would make myself and everybody else here very hungry, and I would also probably be here all night because the food is extraordinary. But also just breaking bread, the tradition of breaking bread with a great many different people was another special part of the trip. And so I somewhat regretted leaving Tel Aviv because the restaurants, beginning with the breakfast, has anybody been to the Carlton Hotel? Anybody remember the breakfast? I would not be sad to find myself having breakfast there just about every day. But no sooner had we gotten the feel for Tel Aviv than it was time to move on. The original plan that Wednesday was for us to take a helicopter up to the north and visit a hospital where Syrian refugees, among others, are being treated. Unfortunately, there was a decision earlier that night by Iranian-backed forces in Syria to go ahead and shell that region, which thankfully didn't lead to casualties on the ground, but did mean that our host decided it wasn't the best day to take us up there. I thought it would have been fine, maybe a little more exciting. But it was also a reminder of the kinds of pressures that people live under. I have to say I admire in particular the way in which those pressures were not allowed to dominate people's lives. They were taken seriously, but they were not something that stopped people in their tracks. I hope Americans can learn from this, because I think in many ways the purpose of terrorism, even more than to harm you, is to become your priority. And while there's a certain emotional satisfaction in saying things like, this has changed us and we'll never be the same, after 9/11, for example, I'm not sure I want to give somebody the power to change us, that we would never be the same, through an act of terrorism. And so seeing the way, and somebody who knows a little bit about what it's like to be under a rocket attack, but has a hard time imagining squaring that experience with that going to the grocery or trying to have a normal life for kids. It was a reminder of the different approaches that exist and the importance of deciding that normalcy is something that can only be taken from you by your consent. Despite that very sobering security reality, we were able to continue very much enjoying the trip, which then led us to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a place that I could not have quite prepared for the emotional power we're seeing. Again, the first thing you notice is it's quite a bit smaller than you might have guessed. If you think about it in biblical terms, or even just based on what you see on CNN, you might imagine the Western Wall to be bigger than this room. I'm not sure it is. And so when you see that, it has a certain effect on you. When you touch it, it has another effect on you. And I still haven't figured out how to put that into words. But also having a chance, in keeping with my own faith tradition, to see the Stations of the Cross and some of the sites that I've read about all my life in Jerusalem was extraordinary. I also felt an unexpected kinship just on the basis of my Mediterranean background. So my father's from the island of Malta, which is not that far off. And I've sometimes been told by my mother that the only explanation for my sense of direction is that it's Maltese. So Malta was built according to the principles of medieval cities, a lot of curving streets and high walls and that sort of thing. And that might be why in a place like South Bend I'm basically helpless without the benefit of a great deal of memory. And any place other than South Bend, I really need that phone to figure out where I'm going. Even on the grid system, which you would think the grid system makes it really easy. But sure enough, in the old city, when I went out to grab a gift to take home, and then was trying to find my way to the other gate, somehow the mysterious logic of the old city made perfect sense in my internal GPS, and I was able to get through there just fine. We had dinner with the Deputy Permanent Representative of the United Nations, another Israeli diplomat who's very involved also in the relationship with North American countries. I'd seen him and some of his colleagues a couple days earlier because actually in a great bipartisan moment, by total coincidence, Governor Holcomb was also in Israel, leading a trade delegation for a major agriculture conference there. And so we arranged for me to sort of crash the party and have dinner with him and his group. So it's the same diplomats who were dealing with him on Tuesday were dealing with us mayors on Thursday. It was a good opportunity to talk about the relationship, but also to express a little bit of concern on the part of mayors about the extent to which support for Israel has shown some risk of becoming a partisan cause, which I think would be unfortunate for both countries. There was obviously a lot of anticipation about the arrival of the Vice President, which happened a few days after we left. We took the opportunity just to remember how important it's been over the years that this has not been viewed as a Democrat versus Republican question, and how important it would be for it to remain that way. I remember as a student seeing events where there would be a keynote by, I think at the time it was Tom Daschle and Trent Lott. I don't know if there's ever been an event that both Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer would both speak in. But if there was, I hope it would be something like this, where we can take the partisan piece out of it. Of course, I'd like to believe that always is true of international relations and security, but in today's environment in our country, obviously we know that's not always possible. So I don't know that I've been able even now to distill all of the things I saw into a single lesson or set of lessons. Except that I came away, first of all, with a renewed appreciation of the extent to which seeing is understanding. I've always, or at least seeing helps to erase misunderstanding. That's to some extent been my experience as mayor, that things I might think I know well on paper, I don't quite know until I've had a chance to see them with my own eyes. But it strikes me that many of the people I've known over the years who speak with the most certainty about what must be done in the Middle East, often not necessarily the people who live there, or even people who spend very much time there. Because partly I have a desire not to be somebody like that I realized it was so important for me to go and at least have seen something for myself. Another was a sense of the resilience of the Jewish people at large, something that was a lesson driven home maybe more than anything by the haunting visit to Yad Vashem, which was something we did toward the end of our visit. Something that anytime you look at history, and again, this is not a political address, but I have to say as we read again occasionally of people being referred to as animals, as we hear about situations where apparently people are sometimes being divided from their children by being told that they're being taken to take a shower. There are some rhymes in history that we need to learn from, especially as some of the darkest chapters, not just for the Jewish people, but in human history, begin to pass out of living memory. No one who was in an adult in a position of authority at the time is able to educate us. We're so thankful for the survivors who are in our community to this day who help to educate us, but also thankful for the education that goes on at a place like Edveshem that really asks you to do something that's hard to do, which is walk through a very dark place at a very dark time, but to know that it was just people. The people you admire and the people who horrify you have this feature in common, and then when you get up close, they're just people. And it's a reminder of what's at stake in the way that people we know and people we don't are behaving today, whether it's in our political life or outside of the political space. And yet, as wrenching as that experience was, the final experience you had was one of hope. You come up on that slope, the sun is shining, and you see life on the other end of that dark tunnel. And that was a very big part of what I took away, a sense that people, both uniquely because of the experiences there, but also just as a very human quality, are determined to find ways toward peace, toward understanding, toward growth, and to the extent that we as a community can remain connected with other communities around the world, and in particular some of the communities I had the privilege of seeing on this trip, I think we'll be better off. So that's what I had to say. I know we were trying to allow a little time for questions. Hopefully I haven't gone over too long. And we'll be happy if there are any questions or observations from within the group. Certainly be happy to hear that.
Do you think you'll be implementing something from the wastewater learning?
Potentially. You know, one of the most, in addition to just the, I'm so glad the first question about wastewater. I didn't know I could get you all there to the mayor's way of looking at the world so quick. I am going to ask some questions about the techniques and technology, because like us, they have anaerobic digesters. I promise not to nerd out too much, but they have anaerobic digesters, which produce materials in terms of gases that can be used and recycled and reused. Now they have the additional problem that they had to build for security reasons a concrete casing around this basically giant methane balloon that absorbs some of the gases that come from the process. Other than that part, we have a very similar intention here. Our public works director calls it the poop to power program. I'm not sure if I can officially call it that. But we're actually already in the process of learning how to convert some of the gases that are generated by that process to go into our trash truck. I don't know if you know this, but solid waste trucks in the city of South Bend now run on compressed natural gas. And so I want to find out whether some of the technologies that we saw there are comparable to ours, or whether there's anything we can learn by adapting to some of the things. Okay. The other thing they did a very good job over there was education. So as we were there, there was a school group there, and I got the impression that just about every school kid, at least in Tel Aviv, would have a chance to see that plant. And it's probably not something when I'm sure there's some teachers in the room, you're thinking, what's the field trip going to be today, or this year? Yeah, I'm not sure that ever made it into the top 10 or something in our museum. But people got to learn, especially if it's incumbent on us to view not just the delivery of water, but also its removal as a scarce capability that costs us, that takes energy and it takes time. We just got the ribbon today on the Fire Station 4 on the west side of South Bend, and it's the first time we've had a LEED certified facility owned by the city, which is an environmental certification. Part of which was earned by having solar power applied to it, but part of it because the wastewater, actually, they set up gardens and absorption in the soil that just, the cheapest way to deal with wastewater is for it never to hit the system in the first place. And so it's gathering, in this case, stormwater, and keeping it out of our pipes. Things like this, I know they're unsexy and unglamorous, but they're important. And so I'm going to challenge our public works department to see what the technologies are there and see if there's anything else we can learn. But I'm definitely going to try to find some excuse to get more kids to see it for themselves so they understand what their city does for them.
Thank you.
What was the best thing you ate while you were there?
Back to the food, thank you. There's a dish called the St. Peter's fish. It was brought, and I feel like I know fish. Like I said, I'm Maltese. My people do fish. Some of the same fish, I think, from the same sea. But there's a way of doing it. They just fried the whole thing. But it came out with this amazing flavor, and I'm pretty sure the fish was living a very happy life just a few hours before. So it was very fresh. So that was quite an experience. I should also add that we had not just the meals, of course, that were very special. And as somebody who I'll confess is very partisan to some foods that would not be available to you in Israel, I didn't miss a thing. But also, our very last meal there was just as the Shabbat was beginning, and so we were able to participate in that with a group that hosted us in their home, and understanding kind of the custom that attended the beginning of the meal was something that I think put us in a good frame of mind for preparing to return home. If you get me thinking about the food too much, I'm in trouble. All right, Sherry. By the way, Sherry, if you don't know her, is our outreach director. She works with many community groups, including Faith Leaders Roundtable that we organized. So she is at your service, just like I am. You can put a face with a name now if you've ever heard of Sherry. Yes, sir.
Pete, did you see anything along the promenade until the day when you were running that we might incorporate along the riverway?
Actually, yes. I'm glad you mentioned that. So one of the impressive things about that facade has got so many features along it. And one thing you may know about Aaron Perry, who directs our South Bend Venues Parks and Arts program, is he's always looking for new features to be added. So there are more and more things. For example, there was a lot of body weight kinetic workout equipment. I tried this push-up contraption. It was pretty cool. And the best thing about it was you saw people of all ages. This wasn't just for the for the young, glistening joggers who would go by, but really something that kids to senior residents, people were able to use. There was sort of an elliptical machine without a machine, and it was all mechanical. I'm trying to remember, some very interesting pieces of public art, the upside down fiberglass fellow. It was pretty interesting. Remember that one? And it reminded me of some of the qualities of great public art and great parks features in general, which is that they arouse a sense of play, even if they're functional in some way. They give you that kind of sense of play that brings people together. And I think, I suspect, maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but in a place as diverse and in some ways as challenged as Israel, anything that reminds us of the universal qualities, like play, something that's the same for every person and every kid and every grown-up, has a very healthy property to it. So that was very memorable. And I'm definitely going to send a couple pictures back of things I hope we might see here too. And always eager for suggestions. If I miss one on my admittedly not as impressively long as I should say jog. Probably have time for one more. Okay, in the high sign there. Going once. I should mention that we didn't get to spend much time on it, but in the email inviting us to come, there was also a mention that many members of this body were interested in some questions about jobs and economic growth in the community. So I know I'm here mainly to discuss the trip, but just for a 90-second version of that, so you're up to speed. What we're finding is that job growth is happening in more different parallel ways than it ever has in our city. And in order to stimulate more job growth, the most important thing for us is connectivity. Digital connectivity, so that's why our emerging data center is so important. Some of the people who come to work in the data analytics industry have moved to South Bend. I think we always say, to South Bend from places like Boston, places I always thought were cooler than us, have decided to come to South Bend, partly to work in this economy. Second is intellectual property, so the kind of work being developed at our universities and colleges historically was not always encouraged to be commercialized, but now that's happening. Third, physical connectivity. That's why we were very excited to have American Airlines return to South Bend for the first time since 2003. Now we have every major airline serving every major hub coming to South Bend with these Dallas and Charlotte flights in addition to the others. But also that human connectivity that is really based on relationships. This is why we think, for example, as we figure out how to connect ourselves to Chicago a little more quickly with the South Shore Rail, or future routes for the airport, that we find actually what's most important is that a relationship leads somebody to move somewhere to consider a place. No matter how much we do around the numbers on a page around land, labor, utilities, taxes, and all that stuff, it all matters. But what we're finding most makes the difference when I ask somebody who has moved here with their family, or somebody who's chosen our area as a site for a job, for a company or to create jobs. It's really the kind of community, and usually it's somebody they knew introduced them to our city. And so that's why I don't want to miss the opportunity, just as my time meeting closes, knowing that I'm addressing a group of people who have family members, friends, associates all over the region, the country, and perhaps the world, that you will sort of keep South Bend in your equation and allow me informally to enlist you as kind of ambassador for our region. Because the days when you could just imagine all that happens in this city is just happening within our city limits, those days are long gone, and we're going to rise or fall based on our relationships to the rest of the world. You are very much an engine for that. You already are, so I thank you for it, and I'm preaching to the choir. But I do want to let you know that that's only going to become more valuable as we go. Thank you again for the opportunity to join you. Thank you for encouraging me to take this trip. I'm so glad that I did, and look forward to seeing you in the city.